Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Azam Khan. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Tourism chief plays down the prospects of a visitor boom as more COVID measures are abandoned. Chief Executive John Lee embarks on a Middle East mission aimed at boosting trade and economic links. And China urges calm as a balloon controversy prompts the U.S. Secretary of State to cancel a visit to Beijing. Hong Kong has taken more steps to return to pre-COVID days, but tourism officials do not expect the number of visitors this year to reach pre-pandemic levels. Macy Mock reports.
Hong Kong welcomed 55 million visitors in 2019, the year before COVID struck. With the city almost back to normal,
Hello from Hong Kong.
The government launched the Hello Hong Kong campaign ahead of the full reopening of the mainland border on Monday. But senior figures in the industry do not expect tourism to return to its former glory this year. Speaking on radio, tourism chief Kevin Yuen said more visitors arrived after quarantine-free travel to the mainland resumed almost a month ago. But it will take time before tourists flood in. He noted that in the first year after opening up, other regions found that the number of visitors was 70% of the pre-pandemic level. Yuan pledged to keep helping the tourism sector.
With the opening of the border with the mainland and with the expected increase in the number of tourists coming into Hong Kong, we will continue to maintain the liaison with them and see any particular areas that they need more support from the government, both administratively and both from the system angle.
Appearing on iCable's Let's Talk program, Tourism Board Executive Director Dane Jiang was also not optimistic. He said, like other places, Hong Kong is facing a lack of flight capacity and manpower. It will take time for the city to enhance its capacity to receive visitors. Jiang said the Tourism Board is spending over $200 million to promote the Hello Hong Kong campaign and offer incentives to travelers. Macy Mock, HKIBC.
Passengers crossing the border will no longer have to compete for tickets on high-speed trains from Monday. That's when mainland border will be fully reopened after 3 years. Transport Chief Lam Sai-hung revealed in his weekly blog that the daily ticket quota of 30,000 will be scrapped. But there's no concrete timetable on the resumption of long-haul services. Lam suggested that travelers cross the border at the Hung Yuen Wai checkpoint, which will be reopening. The control point caters to both passengers and vehicles. Chief Executive John Lee says Hong Kong aims to improve its economic and trade ties with the Middle East. Before setting off on a tour of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, Lee noted that the city has much to offer the region. Janice Lowe reports.
Before leaving for the Middle East this afternoon, Chief Executive John Lee explained why he picked Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates for his first overseas visit this year. I chose to set foot in the two countries because their economies are well developed, he said. During the 8-day tour, Lee and his entourage of over 30 government and business leaders will meet their counterparts in the Gulf countries. They will also visit corporations in the two countries and take part in business forums. Lee believes Hong Kong's large pool of talent can benefit the Middle East economically. He noted that Hong Kong's status as an international financial center can help contribute to the development and productivity of the countries he's visiting. Hong Kong will soon become an innovation hub and an international cultural exchange center, and it will bring unlimited cooperation between both parties, Lee added. On another issue, the chief executive does not expect travelers to swarm the mainland border when it is fully reopened on Monday. He noted that since the restoration of quarantine-free travel earlier, the number of people crossing the frontier has remained even. Janice Lowe, HKIBC.
About 50 people were evacuated to safety after a fire broke out in a subdivided flat in Tai Kok Tsui. 5 people were sent to hospital after inhaling smoke. Macy Mock has the story.
Flames shot out from a second-floor flat in Peony House in Tai Kok Tsui at around 10 a.m. The upper floors were not visible because of a huge plume of smoke. Firefighters took around an hour to extinguish the blaze. The subdivided flat where the fire broke out was gutted, and the outside of the building was blackened. Firefighters had to use an aerial ladder platform to rescue several people. 56 residents were evacuated to safety. As he removed ashes from his fingers, this man said he was unable to escape on his own because the smoke was too thick. Firefighters helped to guide him out of the building. Another resident said he almost suffocated after inhaling smoke. 5 people fell ill from smoke inhalation and were sent to Huanghua Hospital. 4 cats were found dead inside the flat where the fire started. Police suspect the fire was caused by an electrical short circuit. Later at around 3 p.m., a lorry caught fire in a car park in Lok Ma Chau. The blaze in Wing Ping Chun was doused in 20 minutes. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
1 person has been acquitted of rioting in Nathan Road during the social unrest, but 11 others have been convicted. District Judge Lily Wong said as police had warned people to disperse, those who had no intention to join a riot would have left. She noted that some defendants were wearing gas masks and helmets when they were arrested on National Day in 2019. Mitigation will begin in 2 weeks. The person who was cleared was not geared up. Activists have taken to the streets of Yaotong to protest against a concrete plant that is reportedly still operating, although the government has refused to renew its license. The small protest was among the few to be given the green light by police since COVID. Janice Lowe reports.
Public protests have rarely been seen in the past 3 years since Hong Kong was hit by the pandemic. But it is believed that the authorities have approved small demonstrations, including one in Yaotong this morning. A group numbering fewer than 10 protested against a concrete plant which is still operating in the area. The Environmental Protection Department refused to renew the plant's license 2 years ago, saying its malpractices caused air pollution and nuisance. 2 weeks ago, the High Court dismissed the plant's bid to overturn the government order. But the protesters accused officials of not enforcing the ruling. They marched for about 700 meters before reaching a police cordon outside the plant.
I'm actually quite pleased and quite encouraged by how this has gone, because this, I think, opens up now we can start doing a lot more protest and a lot more civil society can have a voice again, because we've been shut down for 3 years about complaining.
Ockenden is convinced that protests will push the authorities to act.
Our government is quite shameless, and I think unless it sees people on the street with banners, it's not going to do anything. I think negative press reports don't frighten our government, but people waving banners is something they might take notice of.
Organizers of protests involving more than 30 people have to apply to police for a letter of no objection. Security Chief Chris Tang said earlier no such letter was issued in the past 3 years. Janice Lowe, HKIBC.
The Chinese balloon hovering over the United States has burst a plan for a visit to Beijing by the top U.S. diplomat Antony Blinken. Beijing has called for calm as the U.S. strengthened alliances in the Asia-Pacific region in the wake of China's growing military and economic might.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called off his visit to Beijing after a Chinese balloon, which the Pentagon said was for surveillance, was spotted over sensitive military areas in the United States. China said the balloon was used mainly for weather research and had been blown astray. The Foreign Ministry expressed regret, but stressed that Beijing never violated the airspace of any sovereign country. It accused U.S. politicians and the media in the United States of using the incident to smear China. In a phone conversation, top Chinese diplomat Wang Yi advised Blinken that the two countries should avoid misjudgments.
I told Director Wong that the United States remains committed to diplomatic engagement with China and that I plan to visit Beijing when conditions allow. In the meantime, the United States will continue to maintain open lines of communication with China, including to address this ongoing incident.
Blinken had been set to hold talks in Beijing on a wide range of issues, including security and the South China Sea. The latest developments came as U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told his visiting Australian counterpart, Richard Marles, that significant progress had been made towards getting Canberra a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines. Austin has just returned from a tour of Asia, where he recalibrated security ties with U.S. allies in an apparent effort to contain China. His stops included the Philippines, which granted the U.S. military access to 4 more bases.
A state of emergency has been declared in various parts of Chile, where at least 13 people have been killed in wildfires. The fires in the South American country destroyed hundreds of homes and 14,000 hectares of forest. Firefighters struggled because of strong winds and a heat wave, but they managed to douse almost 3/4 of the 200 fires that broke in southern and central Chile. Soldiers have been deployed to help speed up the operation. Relief agencies have begged European governments to have more sympathy for migrants to prevent tragedies at sea. This comes after 8 Africans froze to death while trying to reach Europe by boat. 2 others, a newborn baby and a man, were swept away by waves. A German relief agency rescued the remaining 46 migrants from their sinking vessel and took them to the Italian island of Lampedusa. Many of them were said to be traumatized by the deaths during the hazardous crossing. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has appealed for an end to the cycle of violence in the occupied territories and Israel.
We fear that recent measures being taken by the government of Israel are only fueling further violations and abuses of human rights law and violations of international humanitarian law. Last year saw record numbers of Palestinians killed in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and the highest number of fatalities of Israelis inside Israel and in the occupied West Bank in many years. Already this year, we have seen more bloodshed and destruction, and the situation continues to grow more volatile.
There is concern that the expansion of Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank will escalate tensions. The settler population has now exceeded 500,000, encroaching into territory which the Palestinians want for an independent state. Celebrated rebel fashion designer Paco Rabanne has died at the age of 88 at his home in France. His death was announced by Puig, the parent company of his brands. The Spanish-born designer was known for perfumes that sold worldwide and his metallic, space-age fashions. He supplied accessories to well-known designers before launching his own collection in 1966. On to the weather now. Mainly cloudy tomorrow with a few patches of rain. Temperatures will range between 17 and 20 degrees. Sunny periods will kick off next week. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Saturday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Azam Khan. Good night.